Hi there, Neil from Diagonal Move here. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if this is your first time. Today we're going to have a playthrough, stroke rules overview, stroke lengthy ramble about a game I enjoy playing. That game is Battle of Midway, a collaboration between toy manufacturer Cobi Toys and Board Games, a board game company from Poland. The game itself is set during World War II in the Pacific region, and you have the Japanese forces and the American forces fighting a combined air and naval battle around the island of Midway. One of the more famous battles of that part of the Second World War. This game focuses primarily on the air combat, and the aim of the game is to essentially defeat your opponent using the conditions for whichever mode you're playing. There are two modes. One is Domination Mode, where it's really very much the aeroplanes you're focusing on, and the second, the one we're playing today, is called the Aircraft Carrier Mode, which aims to get one of your pieces here, these aeroplanes, whether you're the Japanese or the Americans, and either destroy them in the air or destroy the aircraft carrier by essentially getting one of your planes to the opponent's aircraft carriers. The aircraft carriers are built currently, or printed, are currently on the map underneath where the planes are at the moment, so you can't see them. It's a two-player game. It's very much a two-player game. It's going to be soloed here. However, there are a few modifications I'm going to have to make in order to make it soloable, which is what I'm going to do today, and I'll explain those as I go. But broadly, it's set up as follows. You have the map in the middle with the two forces on each side. These little yellow tokens are activation tokens. They show you which planes have not yet been activated. Across the top we have a sort of a card market where you can buy cards. There's an initiative marker, some extra pieces for the board should you fly off the board, and then each side will have a selection of cards. You have sort of cards in hand which represent order cards, firing cards which will dictate how much power your attack has or your defense, and then a attack zone card or an attack region card, and then maneuver tokens, and these flags are initiative tokens. The game has a number of phases. First up, we have the initiative phase where you bid for ownership of this card. You bid using the little flags, and you have a different set each. And that's one of the things I'm going to have to change, because you do like a blind bid, and instead of bidding for the Japanese, I'm going to roll this dice and halve the result, rounding up, meaning I can decide whether they bid 1, 2 or 3 tokens. The winner of the initiative bid will then decide what they'll do in terms of an action, and you can either perform a flight action or a combat action. Both of them will use these maneuver tokens. You have a different colour for each side, and how you use the maneuver tokens differs slightly based on the action and plane you're flying, so I will go into that as we go through the game. Once you've completed all your actions, and both sides have completed all their actions, and there are no more tokens remaining on the board, so all the planes are activated, you then move on to essentially a card buying phase, where you get to spend any remaining initiative that you did not spend at the beginning of the round on these cards, and these cards will give you an extra buff in combat. You do start with 2. The Americans have the ability to target an aircraft with a second firing round using a different aircraft, and the Japanese have a slightly different ability, which is to draw an additional firing card. These order cards are one use only, so you need to judge when you're going to use them and to get the most out of them. I am ostensibly going to be playing both sides, however I will favour the Americans because that will allow me to give you a sense of one side where I'm planning, and one side where things are going to be blindly revealed to act almost as a second player. It will mean some decisions may end up a little bit strange, but that's the nature of doing a game like this solo. One quick note before I do begin the playthrough: I found some of the rules in the rulebook slightly ambiguous, and I'm going to take a best interpretation of where I find things ambiguous. I'll make a note in the video where I do this. Basically what that means though is this game, more than others, is probably going to be a case of here is my best understanding of the rules. And so if there is a different interpretation that you have, just let me know or flag it somewhere in the comments down below. As always though, this is intended to show you the main overview of the game and how the game works, rather than offer a strategy guide. Should you wish to use this as a strategy guide, you will be disappointed, I'm sure. Okay, let's begin. First up, we have the initiative. Now I have 3 tokens, and so does the Japanese player, meaning that I need to decide what to do. The initiative player has a distinct advantage, particularly in combat, because you get to go first, essentially. And so in order to try to secure combat, or to secure the first initiative, I'm going to play probably just the 1 to start with, because there's no real chance of combat at the moment. You need to be within a certain distance. So I'll just play 1 token to start with. That's my initiative bid there. And then I will roll the dice for the Japanese. Now any of these initiative tokens that you don't spend at the beginning, you get to spend up here, which is very important for combat later. But anyway, let's roll the dice and see what we have. Hopefully that's on the end of the screen there. Japanese have bid 2, so they will also bid 1, rounding the dice down. This would normally be a decision made by the opposing player. So just one each. In a tie, the Americans do get the initiative first. Okay, so these 2 tokens will go off to one side while I take the initiative as the Americans. This is now the main game proper, and there are 2 actions you can take. You can do a flight action or a combat action. For a combat action, you have to be within a certain distance, and when that happens, I will go into that because it's a little bit different to the flight action. But basically what you do is you choose certain tokens from this group of order tokens here, and you program essentially where your plane is going to fly. Depending on the type of plane you have, you can do a certain number of maneuvers, and they are different depending on the type that you have. Now, the 2 types of planes that you have for both sides are bombers and fighters. The bombers are the blue ones, the lighter blue ones in the Americans' case, and the green ones in the case of the Japanese. The dark blue and the grey are the fighters. So what I'm going to do as the American player for my first turn is I'm going to move one of the fighters. Fighters can move 3 or 4 maneuver tokens. Bombers, it's 2 or 3. So let's take these and see what we'll do. I think the first instance I need to decide which plane I'm going to move, and I think I'll move this one here. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to move it and then turn. Looking at it upside down, my sense of direction not great. So let's do the first maneuver will be forwards and turn, and then we will do forwards and turn, and then forwards. So we will remove this, meaning it is being activated. And the first thing we'll do is we'll forwards and turn, forwards and turn, and then forwards. Should I want to, I could play another maneuver token, but I won't. I will pause there. Okay, that's the maneuvers done for the flight action for the Americans. Now, one key difference between the flight action and the combat action is that at the end of a flight action, you pass this across every time. It differs slightly with the combat. I will get into that when the time comes. It's now the Japanese player's turn, and I'm going to do this a little bit randomly, but I will decide the best move from what I have available to me. So I'll move this plane first, this one on the corner here, remove that to show that that plane has been activated. I'm then going to decide whether to pick 3 or 4 of these. I will choose 4 in this case. So I'll take 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I'll just decide what the best move is for that plane using these 4 tokens. So I think probably forward and turn might be good, and then forward and turn, forward, and then do you know what? I won't play that one because it will take us in a funny direction. So that's what I'll do. I'll pick the 4 and we'll decide what the best move is from those potential 4 each time. So forwards and turn, forwards and turn, forwards. Okay. the initiative now passes back to the Americans. And this time I need to decide which plane to move. I cannot move this plane anymore until the end of the round. And I will again move a fighter, and I will move this fighter here. If you ever pass through another plane, you swap hexes, which makes things quite interesting. So okay, let's move forward twice, I think, and then forward and turn, forward and turn, forward and turn, forward and turn. Okay, so we're getting closer together, but there's still no combat just yet. One thing that I haven't mentioned so far is how do you win this mode? Basically, there's two ways. You either land one of your aircraft onto the aircraft carrier, and you can just about see the tip of it peeking out there for the Japanese. Basically what that means is your aircraft has attacked and destroyed the aircraft carrier. Now, you can do that with just the bombers, so just the lighter blue or the green. The alternative way to win in this mode is to destroy the bombers in flight, and when there's no more bombers, you cannot win using the other mode, and so the player with no bombers loses the game. So hopefully that is clear. Okay, let's move this plane in the corner, again removing that, and this time I think I'll take 1, 2, 4. Okay, four different tokens this time. Let's move and turn, move and turn, and then move twice. Let's do that. Okay, so forward, turn, 2 moves forward. And we repeat this process until all the planes have moved. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably fast forward until we get to the combat round, probably in the next turn. The fighters have all moved, and there's just one bomber remaining to be moved on the American side, but it is the Japanese turn, and we have bombers to move. Now, bombers can move 2 or 3 spaces, or 2 or 3 of these maneuver tokens. So we'll pull 3 in the same principle as I did before, and then just work out the best move. So if we go forwards and turn, forwards and turn, and then forwards, forwards, turn, forwards, turn, forwards. And so the principle for the bombers is exactly the same. Now you do have to just make sure you orientate the front of the plane in the right direction. That can get a little tricky when the planes are quite congested, as we have here. Once again, in combat, the numbers of planes do dwindle quite rapidly. So let's just finish off these last couple of moves. And I think I'll simply move my bomber forward 1 space and then forward 2 spaces. As you can see, they sometimes bash into each other a little bit. Like so, that'll do. And so final action of the round then is the Japanese with this bomber. And I'll just pick that one and that one and go forward 1, forward and turn. So forces are getting closer, but we have come to the end of the player actions, and it's now time to choose cards. The player with the initiative, which in this case is the Japanese, goes first in terms of buying the cards. Now the initiative can change based on what happens in the combat. I'll get into that in a bit more in a minute, but because we just did nothing but flight actions, the initiative has passed over to the Japanese, and they have 2 to spend, 2 of these tokens to spend, and I think the best thing that they can get, having a quick look at the rules reference, is to play a 6th sense card, which allows me, as best as I understand it, to undo and basically replan my combat moves when the time comes. They go on the hand of cards that I have, and that is immediately refilled, and I believe the other player then gets the chance to do the same. Again, we have 2 available, and here we have the opportunity to ignore certain cards and the opportunity to ignore combat completely, but we can't afford that. That does cost 3. You have the cost at the top and then a symbol showing you what the card does. There's also the ability to do a surprise attack, and the ability, that's it for now. The ability to do a surprise attack is the same, and what a surprise attack lets you do is it lets you do not play any more order cards during the combat phase, which basically means you short circuit the combat phase. That sounds quite good to me as the American player, so I will grab one of those, adding it to my hand, and then replenish. Okay, that's the end of the round. Once all the order cards have been purchased, the round ends and you replenish the little yellow dots to show that the planes can be reactivated again, and then you need to return to the initiative bit. Basically, we are now within combat range in theory, so winning the initiative is really important. And to show how important that is, I'm actually going to play 2 initiative tokens as the American player, because even though I would like to buy some of these cards, going first in combat is really important, I think. The Japanese player, I'm going to roll the die again and round it down. So rolled a 1, they've chosen they would like to go second. Okay, the American player gets the initiative, and this is where things differ somewhat from the flight action, because the first thing you need to do is say, okay, I'm going to perform a combat action, and you need to then bash the board and refit the board like so, and then decide which plane you're going to move, and then work out whether you can get there. So the plane I'm going to use is this plane here at the front. It seems the easiest, and then I will attempt to get to one of these planes. Okay, so I can move forward and turn, which will get me to here. Move forward twice. So move forward, turn, 1, 2, and then move forward, turn, 1, 2, move forward and turn. Okay, I can get right in front of that plane there. That's awesome. So I am definitely declaring combat, but I don't move like that. What I do instead is I play 2 maneuvers and then move those 2 maneuvers. There's kind of a reveal mechanism here, because your opponent does the same thing. So basically what happens is I've declared combat using this plane. I can get to this plane, which means this plane removes its activation marker and participates in the combat by also playing maneuvers and then using the cards in hand and the cards here, the range card finder cards, to play out the combat. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these Japanese counters quite randomly, just to make it a bit more interesting for myself, and then I'm going to take those 2. They will be that plane's movement. So I need to decide which 2 to make. Now, important here is consideration of this. Yellow or red signifies the number of cards that you draw and that you can destroy the opponent. Blue, light blue and dark blue is the number of cards that you draw, but you cannot destroy your opponent. So you have an attacking and a defending. And note, for the fighters and the bombers, the values are quite different. Also worth noting is that the values on the 2 sides cards are also quite different for the fighters. Okay, so really as an American, you don't want to be in front of the Japanese 0 when you come to attack. Meaning I really kind of want to be sort of finishing here, pointing this way if I can with my 2 maneuvers. And so those are the 2 that I will play. I'll play forwards and then forwards and turn. Now, once you've revealed the maneuver tokens that you're going to play, the initiative player then needs to decide who moves their plane first. And it's important to place these tokens down in the order that you're going to play them, because they do need to be done from left to right. So as the American player, I get to decide if I go first or if the Japanese side goes first. Now looking at this, they're going to move forward and turn, move forward and turn, displacing this plane. So really, I want to think about how, let them do that first. So first thing we do is forwards and turn, and then forwards and turn again, and we basically swap planes. Meaning they've kind of gone into this kind of V formation. The activation token, as far as I understand it, stays with the plane there. Now the American side have to go forwards and then forwards and turn. So forwards, forwards and turn. Okay, we are facing the enemy, which is what we want. However, the plane we are attacking has gone into the mix of planes, so we may not be able to hit it. Consulting the card, we have a straight line for 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then to either side in kind of a decreasing number we have the 2s. So I don't think, looking at that and the picture on the board, I think we basically go here and then we move this way, meaning we cannot hit that plane. The enemy has got away, so we've kind of fluffed it a little bit. The combat has failed, and we now need to move on to the next aircraft activation. Now in a combat action, if you have a yellow dot still associated with any of your planes, so you still have planes to activate, it's your turn again to take an action. It only passes from player to player during that flight action. There's a subtle difference between how the initiative works for combat and for flying, but it's quite key because you can then work out which of your planes you're going to how you're going to effectively limit what the opponent can do using your planes. It's really quite clever. Okay, so we know first thing we should do, can we reach the opponent? And we can go 1, 2, 1 and turn, 1 and turn. I reckon we can hit 1 and turn, 1 and turn, get me here. Let's change of plan. Let's go 1 and turn, 1, 1 turn, and then 1. Yeah, 4 maneuvers will get us within range of the same 0 we attacked before. Now the question here is, do we want to do that? Because we can certainly attack that plane, but they don't have an activation marker, so they won't activate again in this round, which makes sense then to attack a different plane. But the question is, can I actually get there with the plane I've chosen to activate? So forward and turn, and then forward twice. Yeah, that will get me in front, directly in front of this plane. So now we need to do the thing we did before, where we choose what to do. And again, as the Americans, I'll move forwards, and then I will move forwards and turn. Hopefully you can see that. Removing these ones. This is the plane I'm moving. Should have taken that off already. This is the plane that's being attacked, so we remove that, and then I'll give these a quick shuffle and pick that one and that one for the Japanese. Okay, let's reveal. And we have forwards and turn, forwards and turn. Okay, so the Japanese player, I'm going to force the Japanese player to go first. So forwards and turn, forwards and turn. And my guy will go forwards and then forwards and turn. Okay, that's not so good for the American side, because I'm now bang in the centre of the Japanese Zero's firing range. So they're going to draw 3 cards as a minimum against me in this combat. I, on the other hand, will only draw 2 because I'm kind of off to one side of them. So each player will give their little firing cards a shuffle, because I can't remember if I did that prior to starting the game, and you'll draw the number of cards you've chosen, in my case 2, and the Japanese player will draw 3. Each player then has the opportunity to play a card from their hand. The defender will play the card first, in this case it's the Japanese, so we'll have a look at what they have. They could draw the extra firing card, which sounds good, but we're firing at 3, so we're in an advantage anyway, so I won't bother with those, so they're both the same. The other card is the Sixth Sense card, which allows you to reverse your orders and basically undo your move, and I believe play again. Now, we don't really want to do that either because it's right in front of us. We really couldn't get much better. So we're not going to play any additional cards as the Japanese player. The attacker, the American in this case, gets the chance to go. Now, we have a couple of cards here. Again, we have our unique ones, which allows us to attack with a second plane, or we have the ability to stop playing order cards. Now, that would be very useful if you were the defender, but I'm not. I'm the attacker, despite being at the disadvantaged position that I'm in, meaning I need to think about whether or not I do this. And this is one of the rules that's slightly ambiguous because it only says that you perform the additional firing if your plane is not involved in combat. Now, I have two planes potentially within range that are not involved in combat, but only one of them has an activation token. And my reading would be that you'd have to have an activation token because as the defender, your activation token is removed. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that is how I'm going to play it. Now, I won't use that in this instance because I want to use that when I come to fight the bombers. So I'm trusting ever so slightly to luck as to whether my cards that are underneath here are actually going to be sufficient to destroy the Japanese Zero. Now, had I played a card, the defender would have had an opportunity to play a second card. And if the defender had played a second card, the attacker would have had an opportunity to play a card in response. And that would repeat until either no one's got any cards left or someone chooses not to play. But in this case, though, it's just straightforward. The baseline cards and the Japanese have a grand total of 7 plus 4, that's 11. That's quite a high number. I don't think I'm going to have much luck. And I have a 4 and a 2. Okay, my card value is lower than the opponent's, therefore I've lost. You lose this firing element depending on where your plane is situated relative to the other on this firing diagram, depends on whether or not you're destroyed. And as I said before, the yellow and red mean you can be destroyed. They're the attacking zones, if you like. And so slap bang in the middle of the firing range, my guy is dead and removed from the game. Combat's short and brutal in this particular game. Firing cards go back into the decks, which are then shuffled. Okay, that's not such a good start for the American player. I do still have that initiative card as the Americans, so I am, as far as I'm aware, the active player. And even though I lost, that means I get to go again as the Americans. And this time I will do another combat and I will attack that plane with this plane. Meaning that I'm not attacking anything with an activation marker, so I'm not limiting what can be done. Just rearranging some of these planes a little. They do get a little bit crowded at the beginning of the game. And hopefully getting some vengeance on this plane that just blew up my colleague. So 2 tokens, and I'm just going to, I think I'll move and turn. Gosh, that's tricky. Let's move and turn to get me sort of here, and then I will play this one to move and turn to get me facing that plane and hopefully out of the way of the Zero's guns. Okay, so that's what I'll do. Making sure they're in the right order. And then I'll grab a couple at random. Okay, so the Japanese Zero is moving and then moving and turning. Okay, which means he's very close to the bombers, which not such a threat at the moment, but in the future, that's a risk. Whereas my guy's moving and turning, moving and turning. Okay, I will go first this time. So I will move and turn, move and turn. The Japanese will go move, move and turn. Okay. Now that we've moved our planes, we need to look at the firing diagrams and the Japanese player, my guy is in the defensive zone of the Japanese player. He's kind of in this kind of dot there. For the Americans, I think I'm also in a defensive region, so that's another attack basically fluffed. I won't play the cards for that because both players are defending, no one will be destroyed. So let's think about my next turn. And do I want to move my bomber, or do I want to try another firing? Let's move. I won't do an attack. I could attack with my bombers, because although the bombers are primarily defensive, anywhere in that yellow circle means they can destroy. So might be worth trying an attack with my bomber. But I won't. I think I will just move, and I will move this bomber here out of the way of the 0, going forward twice, and then for its third move I will move and turn towards the enemies. So move twice, 1, 2, and then 1 and 2, staying in tight to my escort. Okay, so that was a flight action, meaning the initiative now swaps to the Japanese player. As the American, I did manage to stop these guys activating, meaning they're not really a direct combat risk at the moment, because the nearest one to me is this one, which would have to kind of go at a funny angle to get round. Now it's potentially doable, but the question is, let's have a look. So forward and turn should get you sort of there. Forward. No, I don't think that's the best position. So let's concentrate then on a flight action for the Japanese. And again, I'll do it slightly at random, but I will move this fighter first. Pick 2, 3 and 4. As the Japanese player, I really want to bring my guns to bear on the Americans, because they do have a better firing zone, a zone of fire, than the American planes. So really those fighters do need to be in a good position at the start of the next turn. So the first thing I'll do then is I'll move forward and turn. I'll move forward twice, like so, and then I'll move forward again and turn, bringing my guns directly towards the American planes. Initiative hands back because that was a flight action, and the American just has the 2 planes remaining. And this is where the disadvantage of combat actually comes in, because I've managed to finish combat without really doing much. I've lost a plane and I now have less turns remaining than the opponent. Let's get the bomber this direction if possible. So let's remove that. And I will, it's in this direction, so forward and turn, and then forward again. That's that done. That would have been these 3 tokens, those 3 tokens there. The Japanese player will get to go. Again, we really want that fighter in the towards the enemy. So let's pull out 4 tokens, work out the best move. Okay, so several forwards and a couple of forwards and turns. It's this one, it's facing a sort of funny angle, because so I think it's probably going to go this way, forward and turn, and then forward, and then forward and turn. Okay, so we're kind of shoveling in there, and that's the end of the Japanese player's flight action. Final turn for the Americans, and I will move forward, turn. Okay, as the American player, I have no more activations, so the Japanese are just going to move their 2 bombers and it'll be 2 flight actions. And for the first one, let's pick those 2 and a third, and using that, this one, let's go forwards, forwards turn, forwards turn. Ideally what you want to do with the bombers is to get behind the enemy and get onto there as quick as possible, or at least have a screen of your own guys against the fighters. So the final action then, another shuffle, and I will pull 3, and this bomber will go forwards, forwards, turn, forwards, turn. Okay, that's the end of the actions round. Japanese player is the player with the initiative at the end of that activation round. Therefore, the Japanese player gets a choice of cards first. We have 2 to spend as the Japanese player, and I think it would be worth having this Alerian roll, which allows us to ignore a card from the opponent. So that's two tokens, and now the American gets to spend 1 token. We have a loop which allows us to reverse our maneuvers, which I'm assuming means undo, and we have another surprise attack. Oh, we have a surprise attack. Don't really. Well, I can't afford the other 2, so I guess the only card we can buy is this one, and there's no harm in buying it, even if we don't eventually get to use it. With the board reset, it's time to bid for the initiative, and I do wish to go first this time. I don't really like the look of any of those cards on there, so I'm going to bid for 3. Now, you don't have to bid any tokens at all, but I'm going to bid 3. The Japanese player has rolled a 3, meaning they will bid 2 tokens when you halve it and round up. So the initiative is the Americans in the first instance, leaving me with an interesting challenge. On the one hand, my fighters are nicely protecting this guy, and potentially there's the opportunity to do some damage in terms of combat here. However, we are at a bit of a loose end with this guy, and so hopefully I could get him around the side towards this. The issue here is all of my guys are within range of a fighter. So I'll play the bomber, just a flight action this time, so forwards and turn, forward, forward, trying to get around the back towards the instant win, that is this aircraft carrier section. So I've done a flight action, not a combat, meaning the initiative passes now to the Japanese player. And the Japanese player has 4 planes it can fly. There's a 0 there, a 0 there, and then the 2 bombers. Still quite congested. The Japanese have managed to escape combat a number of times. And I think it would be worth attacking this plane against this bomber, and easily within the number of maneuvers, but let's just move those tokens for now. Just get my fingers in there. I think the game is designed for smaller hands than mine. There we go. And then we'll play the 2. The Japanese player. Let's pick for the Japanese player. Because I reckon going forward and turn probably would be the best thing actually. But we're just going to make sure it's the right forward and turn. So forward and turn, forwards and turn. That'll do. And then as the American player, I will probably try to get away with a forward and turn, and then a forwards. Okay. But the Japanese player gets to choose who goes first, and let's have the American go first. So forward and turn, forwards. Japanese player is forward and turn, forwards and turn. Okay. the 0 is behind the American bomber. And when we look at the 0, we are within the 3 firing range still, because it comes out at kind of a V shape. So we're still within 3 cards range for the Japanese. For the American bomber, it's a slightly different pattern. We have a 2-hex circle around the plane where you can attack and destroy, and a 1-hex circle around that where it is purely defensive numbers. So we're within the 2-hex attacking circle. They do just draw the 2 cards for the Americans though. This time the Americans are defending, so we get to choose whether or not to play a card first. I can choose to play this card or this card, which will allow me to use that second combat firing round, but I don't see that there's much point in this instance, because on my understanding that it has to be a plane with an activation marker. This is the only one, and we're currently sat in a defensive region. The other one is to reverse the maneuvers that I did, meaning basically I would go with no real benefit. So no card for the defender, however the attacker, it makes absolute sense to play this card here, which is draw an additional firing card, meaning they will now be firing 4 against the opponent's 2. With the attacker having played a card, the defender gets the opportunity to play a card if they wish to, and I don't think there's any more benefit now than there was before, so it is time to reveal the cards. The Japanese player has got quite a lot. I think we're looking at 18 there. Wow, that is shocking. With just 7 for the Americans. So the American bomber is destroyed, and the Japanese are 50% of the way to winning this game. Having attacked and destroyed a plane, the active player now can go again, because we do still have these tokens as the Japanese player. That allows us to do that. The obvious thing to do would be to try to attack this bomber. Now I think we can reach it. We just do a forward and turn, forward and turn, forward, forward. However, when we get to roll to use just the 2 in the combat, we can't really get to a decent enough angle to get a good attack on that bomber. So I think the sensible thing to do would actually be just to move the 0, and I'll do it at random as I did before. So here are the 4 potential tokens, and we'll move forward and forward, forward. Yeah, let's try it. Forward and turn, then forward, forward. So forward and turn, forward, forward, forward. Okay, so we're coming round as the Japanese player to attacking the bomber on the next turn. We did just move the Japanese 0 out of the way there. The initiative now passes back to the Americans, who need to decide what to do. They're at a significant disadvantage here. Their planes are all within attacking range of the Japanese, and they have just 1 fighter left to move. I think with 3 or 4 maneuvers we would have to go, I think just forward, forward, and then forward turn is probably the sensible thing. So forward, 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 turn, in the hope of getting to those bombers next time. The American player is out of activations, so the Japanese player now gets to move the bombers, moving the top one first. And it would make sense to move into, I could do a combat action against that bomber in the hope that we would destroy the bomber. That would be risky, but potentially worth doing. But ultimately what we want really is to try and get 1 of them over there. So let's do the 3 movement tokens, see what we've got. So forward and turn, forward and turn. That probably works nicely. So forward and turn, forward and turn. Because the Americans have no more activations, we get to do the same thing with the other bomber. I've drawn these 3 tokens, and it makes sense to go forward, forward, forward and turn, putting us right in the middle of that congested area. At the end of that round, the Japanese player has 1 token to spend and the Americans have none. Shame not to buy a card, so let's just spend 1 on the surprise attack. As the American player, I'm feeling the lack of decent cards. Now there is a card here called Dodge, which lets you skip the firing round of a current combat, which would be really useful, I think, to defend some of my guys. So I think I will play no tokens for the initiative, leaving 3 for the card purchase phase. The Japanese have rolled a 1, meaning that they will have less to spend, but they will go first. Now, as the Japanese player, there are a few key things that really need to get done this turn. First on the list is to destroy that bomber if we can. Second on the list would be to get our bombers closer to the aircraft carrier. Now, I think it would be well worth attempting to get rid of the fighter cover with this plane and this plane before moving after the bomber with these two. We're at a significant number advantage now as the Japanese player. So let's do that. Let's do that first with this one. We're well within 2 maneuvers here. Just one would get us adjacent to that. And as the Japanese player, I'm going to move and turn and then move forwards. There we go. Move and turn and then move forwards. The American player in combat, needing to remove that token, of course, it would make sense, I think, to move forwards and then move forwards and turn and move forwards. Again, try to get behind. So forwards and turn and forwards. As the Japanese player, I would like the American player to go first. Forwards and turn and then forwards, moving me out of the way actually, which is an interesting situation. We've flown past each other very closely. The Americans, the 0 though, will move forward and turn and then forwards. Now both players are in each other's defensive zones, so there won't be a combat as I understand it. Still the Japanese player's turn though. Let's move this 0 here out of the way of the bombers if we can and target this bomber. In the process we can get there with just 2 maneuvers. 2 forwards will get us to there. So we don't have that bomber now available as the Americans, which means they won't get any closer to this at the moment. Okay, so the Japanese player needs to go forwards and then forwards turn, I think, so forwards and forwards turn, which would kind of bring it here, forwards and turn. For the American player, I don't think this is actually too bad. I mean, assuming we survive, we can use it as a quick way of getting closer to the aircraft carrier. So I think a forward and a forward would be useful for the Americans. Japanese player gets to choose which of the 2 planes fly first, and the bomber can fly first, followed by the Japanese aircraft, which is, oops, there we go, 1, 2, okay. We are within 2, I believe, for the, goes out that way. No, it's still within 3. It's within 3 for the Japanese player. For the Americans with the bomber, it is within defensive range of 2. Okay, so an automatic disadvantage there for the Americans. But the Americans do get to go first. Now let's make sure we shuffle these cards. Okay, the Americans get to roll first. Not roll, but play a card first. And the card that we'll play is not actually going to be available to us. And we cannot really easily attack because other planes are in the way. So we're kind of short on cards to play as the American player. Wow, okay. The Japanese player, though, again, it makes a world of sense to play a second card, or to play the card that allows you to draw an additional firing card, like so. So reveal the cards, and we have 2, 6, 9, 16 and 11. Okay, the American player is dead. The Battle of Midway can no longer be won because the Americans do not have the firepower to destroy the battleships or the aircraft carriers, and therefore the Japanese player wins. That's the end of the game then, and the end of the video. Hopefully that has left you with a good sense of how the game plays, some of the strategic options you have as both sides, and a good sense of whether or not this game is for you. The game would of course play quicker if I wasn't talking it through, and it is very much geared up for 2 players. But nevertheless, I hope it's given you a good idea of what to expect, and do like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I will see you for the next video.